Most people think they play the lottery because they believe they might win. That's not why. The real reason is simpler and more unsettling. The lottery is designed to keep you coming back whether you win or not. Not through luck, not through hope, through specific psychological and financial mechanisms built directly into how the game works. And once you see exactly how those mechanisms operate, the behavior stops looking irrational. It starts looking completely predictable. Here's the uncomfortable reality. Americans spent over $104 billion on lottery tickets in 2024. That's more than they spent on movie tickets, sports tickets, music, and books combined. And the people spending the most are not wealthy gamblers. According to the Journal of Gambling Studies, people in the bottom fifth of income spend more than twice as much on lottery tickets each year as the richest players, roughly $433 a year versus $193. In the lowest income zip codes in the country, the average adult spends close to 5% of their annual income on lottery tickets. 5%. That's not a splurge, that's a budget line. So the question isn't just, why do people play? The question is, why do people who can least afford it play the most? The answer isn't irrationality. The answer is that the lottery is specifically built to target that behavior. And it works. Here's the core mechanism you need to understand. Your brain was never built to process probabilities, like 1 in 292 million. Think about it. Humans evolved, making decisions about things we can see, touch, and count. You can imagine 5 apples. You can picture 10 people in a room. But 1 in 292 million? That number means nothing to your brain emotionally. A math professor at a US university described it this way. Imagine a swimming pool, 40 feet wide, 120 feet long, 5 feet deep, completely filled with M and Ms. one single green, M, and M is hidden inside. Blindfolded, you reach in and grab one. Those are your Powerball odds. And the Mega Millions odds are even worse. 1 in 302 million. But here's the problem. Your brain doesn't feel those odds. What your brain does instead is something psychologists call probability weighting. When an outcome has a very low probability, your brain doesn't treat it as near zero. Research from the University of Colorado found that people regularly treat a 1% chance as if it's closer to 5%. Your brain inflates small probabilities automatically, not because you're being foolish, but because that's how human risk assessment works. So when you buy a lottery ticket, you don't feel the true odds. You feel a distorted version of those odds, one that's meaningfully higher than reality. What your brain feels next is the price of admission. A lottery ticket costs $2. For $2, your brain immediately switches from "this is a financial transaction" to "this is a possibility." That shift, from transaction to possibility, is the entire product the lottery is selling. Not a jackpot, not a chance at wealth, a feeling of possibility. And that feeling is immediate. The jackpot might be distant, but the daydream starts the moment you buy the ticket. Researchers call this the entertainment value of anticipation. You buy the ticket on Monday. You think about what you do with the money on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. By the time the draw happens on Friday, you've already received something. Several days of low-grade excitement. The loss barely registers. The cycle starts again. At $2 a week, that's roughly $104 a year for what amounts to a recurring mental escape. That framing, entertainment, not gambling, is exactly how many lottery players describe their own behavior. And it's not wrong. It's just also how the lottery is designed to be perceived. Let's get concrete. In 2016, the Powerball jackpot climbed to $1.6 billion. In the weeks before the drawing, ticket sales exploded. Convenience stores ran out of paper. Lines formed around the block. People who hadn't bought a ticket in years suddenly stopped on the way to work. Why? Not because the odds got better. They didn't. The odds of winning Powerball are always 1 in 292 million, regardless of the jackpot size. But when the jackpot hits $1.6 billion, something changes in how your brain evaluates the situation. Psychologists call this probability weighting. When a prize is large enough, your brain stops processing it rationally and starts treating it as emotionally plausible. $10 million feels winnable, but not life-changing enough to obsess over. $1.6 billion triggers a completely different emotional response. Your brain shifts from, "that won't happen," to, "but what if it does?" That single mental shift is worth billions of dollars to the lottery industry. And they engineer it deliberately. Jackpots are allowed to roll over, meaning when nobody wins, the prize grows larger. The lottery doesn't reset the jackpot to keep things fair. It lets it grow specifically because larger jackpots drive exponentially more ticket sales, more players, more revenue. No change in the actual odds. That is not a side effect. That is the design. But jackpots are only one part of the picture. Scratch-off tickets work through a completely different mechanism, and in many ways, a more powerful one. Here's how it works. You buy a scratch-off ticket. You scratch the first symbol. Nothing. You scratch the second. Nothing. You scratch the third. A jackpot icon. Your pulse spikes. You scratch the fourth. Another jackpot icon. 2 out of 3 needed to win. You scratch the fifth, and it's not the jackpot symbol. You lost. But here's what's strange. You don't feel like you lost the way you do when you simply miss. You feel frustrated, energized, like you were right there, like you almost had it. Researchers at the University of Waterloo found that this near-miss experience, uncovering 2 out of 3 jackpot symbols, triggers the same emotional response in your brain as an actual win. Not similar, the same. The areas of the brain that activate when you win also activate when you almost win, which means losing in the right configuration feels like almost winning, and almost winning feels like a reason to try again. This is not accidental. Research published in peer-reviewed gambling studies found evidence that scratch-off tickets are structured to include more near-miss combinations than random chance alone would produce. The top prize symbol appears in clusters of 2, engineered to show up together without completing the trio. You don't almost win by chance, you almost win by design. There's a second force at work here, and it's even more fundamental. For a large portion of lottery players, this isn't really about gambling at all. It's about the absence of other options. A researcher at the University of Virginia studying American lotteries put it plainly. He said the lottery has become an alternative mechanism of social mobility, a way of reaching financial success in an economy that feels increasingly closed off. Think about what that means in practice. You're earning $28,000 a year. You know that saving $100 a month, if you can even do that, will take decades to build any meaningful financial cushion. You know that buying a house on your income in your city is effectively impossible without something changing dramatically. You know that your salary is unlikely to triple in the next 5 years. The smart financial advice: save consistently, invest in index funds, build wealth gradually, requires a starting point. And for a significant portion of Americans, that starting point doesn't exist. The lottery isn't an irrational choice layered on top of other good options. For many people, it feels like the only available path to a genuinely different financial outcome. There's another mechanism layered on top of this one: the gambler's fallacy. This is the belief that if something hasn't happened for a while, it becomes more likely to happen soon. You've played for 6 months without winning. You start to feel like you're due. You've picked the same numbers for 2 years, and they haven't come up. Surely it's only a matter of time. But the lottery doesn't work that way. Every single draw is completely independent of every previous draw. Your numbers have no memory of you. They have no debt to pay. The odds on draw number 500 are identical to the odds on draw number 1. But that due feeling is real, and it's one of the most powerful retention mechanisms in the whole system. It keeps players who have already lost the most convinced that their win is just around the corner. That's a critical distinction. When economists call lottery players bad at math, they're assuming those players have better alternatives they're ignoring. Often, they don't. The lottery sells hope specifically to people whose circumstances have made hope scarce. That's not an accident. That's the market. Now let's zoom out and look at who's actually running this operation. The lottery isn't run by a casino company trying to make a profit. In the United States, the lottery is run by state governments, and that changes everything about how it operates and who it serves. State lotteries spend over $500 million per year on advertising. Their marketing is specifically targeted at lower-income communities, minority neighborhoods, and areas with high financial stress. In 10 states, lottery revenue now brings in more money than corporate income taxes. The promise attached to all of this, the justification that most people have heard, is that lottery money funds education. But investigative reporting has found that this promise largely doesn't hold up. In many states, lottery revenue gets directed to the general education fund, but the state then reduces its own education spending by roughly the same amount. The total education budget stays flat. The lottery money just replaces existing government spending. So the cycle looks like this. Low-income communities spend the most on tickets. Those communities generate the most lottery revenue. That revenue flows into state budgets, and the communities spending the money see little of it come back. Meanwhile, the lottery uses a portion of its revenue to advertise more, reaching back into those same communities with messages about the next jackpot, the next drawing, the next chance. Over $500 million per year in advertising, aimed squarely at the people who already spend the most. Every dollar spent on a lottery ticket returns about 65 cents in prizes on average, meaning players lose roughly 35 cents on every dollar, guaranteed. No casino in America legally operates at that house edge. The lottery does because it's the government running it. Here's the counterintuitive insight that most people miss. Lottery spending goes up when the economy gets worse. You might expect the opposite, that people under financial stress would cut unnecessary spending first. But research tracking ticket sales across 24 states found that for every 10% decrease in median household income, lottery spending in that area goes up by 4%. Sales also surged during the COVID-19 pandemic, jumping by more than $15 billion in a single year between 2020 and 2021, one of the largest annual increases ever recorded. This is not what happens with most forms of entertainment when times get hard. People cut back on restaurants, vacations, and subscriptions, but they spend more on the lottery. Why? Because the lottery isn't functioning as entertainment in the traditional sense. It's functioning as psychological relief. When your real financial options narrow, the lottery expands, at least in your imagination. The worse things get, the more valuable a $2 fantasy becomes. That dynamic means the lottery's most reliable customers aren't occasional dreamers. They're people under sustained financial pressure, and the system is structured to capture them at exactly the moment they're most vulnerable. So why do people keep playing the lottery even though they almost never win? Because the lottery was never really designed to be won. It was designed to be played. Every mechanism, the near miss on scratch tickets, the rolling jackpots, the $2 price point, The anticipation between purchase and draw is engineered to generate repeat behavior, not jackpot winners. The jackpot is the advertisement. The real product is the ticket you buy next week. And here's the thing about that. Understanding why you play doesn't automatically make you stop. The mechanisms aren't tricks you can simply outsmart. They're features that exploit how human psychology actually works under conditions of hope, scarcity, and uncertainty. The brain that falls for the near miss is the same brain solving problems, raising families, and building businesses. It's not a broken brain. It's a normal brain, placed inside a system specifically engineered to profit from it. The lottery isn't proof that people are irrational. It's proof that when you design a system carefully enough, you don't need irrationality. You just need humans.